The talking donkey and the stubborn prophet. Ever been so sure you were right, you refused to listen to anyone else, even a talking animal? This is the story of Balaam, a prophet who thought he knew better than God, and the donkey that tried to set him straight. Balaam was a well-known prophet, someone people believed could bless or curse them with his words. One day, messengers from Balak, the king of Moab, arrived at Balaam's door with a tempting offer. Balak was afraid of the Israelites who were camped nearby, and he wanted Balaam to curse them. He promised Balaam great riches and honor if he would just say the words. Numbers 22:2-6. Balaam was tempted. He liked the idea of wealth and recognition. So, he told the messengers to stay the night while he prayed to God for guidance. That night, God came to Balaam and said, "You must not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed." Numbers 22:12. The next morning, Balaam told the messengers to go home. "The Lord has refused to let me go with you," he said. But Balak wasn't easily discouraged. He sent even more important officials with a more enticing offer. Numbers 22:15-17. Balaam, still wanting the reward, told them to wait while he asked God again. This time God, knowing Balaam's heart wasn't truly seeking his will, said, "If these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you." Numbers 22:20. Balaam saddled his donkey and set off with the Moabite officials. But God was angry that Balaam was so eager to disobey, so he sent an angel to stand in the road as an adversary. Numbers 22:22. The donkey saw the angel standing in the road with a drawn sword. Terrified, she turned off the road into a field. Balaam, furious that his donkey had strayed, beat her to get her back on the path. Numbers 22:23. The angel then stood in a narrow path between two vineyards, with walls on both sides. Again the donkey saw the angel, and trying to avoid it, pressed against the wall, crushing Balaam's foot. Balaam was even angrier and beat the donkey again. Numbers 22:24-25. The angel moved further down the road to an even narrower place, where there was no room to turn. When the donkey saw the angel, she lay down under Balaam. Enraged, Balaam beat the donkey with his staff. Numbers 22:26-27. Then something extraordinary happened. The Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" Numbers 22:28. Balaam unbelievably answered the donkey, "You have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." Numbers 22:29. The donkey replied, "Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden, to this day? Have I ever been in the habit of doing this to you?" Numbers 22:30. Balaam, dumbfounded, could only say, "No." Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed down and fell face down. Numbers 22:31. The angel said to Balaam, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is reckless before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If she had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared her." Numbers 22:32-33. Balaam finally realized his mistake. "I have sinned," he said to the angel. "I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now if you are displeased, I will go back." Numbers 22:34. But the angel told Balaam to continue on his journey, but to only speak the words God gave him. Balaam continued on to Balak, but instead of cursing Israel as Balak desired, Balaam blessed them 3 times, just as God commanded. Numbers 24:10. Moral lesson. This story teaches us the importance of obedience and humility. Even when we think we know what's best, we must always listen to God's guidance. Balaam's stubbornness and desire for personal gain blinded him to God's will and almost cost him his life. God can even use unexpected messengers like a talking donkey to get our attention and redirect us to the right path. We must be open to hearing God's voice, even when it comes from surprising sources. 2. Hook title. The leper who said thank you. Hook beginning. Imagine being so sick that everyone avoided you, so isolated that a thank you becomes a revolutionary act. This is the story of one leper whose gratitude changed everything. One day, as Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem, he passed through a village. As he entered, 10 men who had leprosy stood at a distance, keeping their distance as the law required. Leprosy was a terrible disease that caused sores and disfigurement, and it was highly contagious. People with leprosy were forced to live apart from society, considered unclean and outcasts. Luke 17:11-12. These 10 men, desperate for healing, cried out to Jesus, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." They had heard stories of his miraculous healings and hoped he could cure them too. Luke 17:13. Jesus saw their suffering and with compassion told them, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." According to Jewish law, a priest had to examine a leper and declare them clean before they could rejoin society. Jesus was telling them to go through the official channels, indicating that he was about to heal them. Luke 17:14. As they went, they were all healed. Their skin became clear, and the disease vanished. They were overjoyed and filled with hope. Luke 17:14. But only one of them, a Samaritan, when he realized he was healed, turned back, praising God in a loud voice. He fell at Jesus' feet and thanked him profusely. Luke 17:15-16. Jesus, noticing that only one had returned, asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Luke 17:17-18. Then he said to the Samaritan, "Rise and go, your faith has made you well." Luke 17:19. Moral lesson. This story highlights the importance of gratitude. All 10 lepers received the same miraculous healing, but only one took the time to express his thankfulness to Jesus. While physical healing is a blessing, true wholeness comes from faith and gratitude. The Samaritan's act of gratitude demonstrated his faith and his recognition of Jesus as the source of his healing, leading to a deeper spiritual healing as well. It reminds us to be thankful for the blessings we receive and to express our gratitude to God and others. It is not enough to just receive, but we must also acknowledge the source of our blessings with a thankful heart. 3. Hook title. The Midnight Earthquake and the Unshaken Jailer. Hook beginning. What does it take to change a hardened heart? A miracle? A personal tragedy? This is the story of a Philippian jailer who discovered faith in the midst of an earthquake and an unexpected act of kindness. Paul and Silas were in Philippi, preaching the gospel. Their message angered some people who dragged them before the authorities, falsely accusing them of disrupting the peace. They were stripped, beaten with rods, and thrown into prison. The jailer was ordered to guard them carefully. Acts 16:19-24. The jailer, taking no chances, threw them into the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks, a device that held their legs in place, making it impossible to move. The jailer assumed that would be the end of it. Acts 16:24. But around midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Imagine the scene. Two men unjustly imprisoned and in pain, choosing to worship God in song. Acts 16:25. Suddenly there was a violent earthquake, so powerful that the foundations of the prison were shaken. All the prison doors flew open, and everyone's chains came loose. Acts 16:26. The jailer woke up and saw the prison doors wide open. Knowing that he would be held responsible for the escape of the prisoners and likely executed, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself. Roman law dictated harsh penalties for jailers who allowed prisoners to escape. Acts 16:27. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself. We are all here." Acts 16:28. The jailer, stunned and trembling, called for lights, rushed into the cell, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Acts 16:29-30. Paul and Silas replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." Acts 16:31. Then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all the others in his house. That very hour the jailer took them and washed their wounds. Then he and all his household were immediately baptized. The jailer brought them up into his house and set a meal before them. He was filled with joy because he had come to believe in God, he and his whole household. Acts 16:32-34. The next morning the magistrates sent officers to tell the jailer to release Paul and Silas. But Paul refused to leave quietly. He insisted that they had been publicly beaten and imprisoned without a trial, even though they were Roman citizens. This was a violation of Roman law. The magistrates, afraid of the consequences, came to apologize and personally escort them out of the prison. Acts 16:35-40. Moral lesson. This story demonstrates the power of faith, forgiveness, and the transformative power of the gospel. Paul and Silas, even in the face of suffering, remained faithful and continued to praise God. Their unwavering faith led to a miraculous event that not only freed them but also opened the heart of the jailer to the message of salvation. The jailer's subsequent act of kindness and his family's conversion show that true faith leads to a changed life. It also teaches us that no one is beyond the reach of God's grace, and that even in the darkest of circumstances, hope and redemption are possible. Or, hook title: The Queen Who Risked It All. Hook beginning. What would you do to save your people from certain death? This is the story of Queen Esther, who faced a king and a deadly plot, risking her own life to save her entire nation. In the ancient kingdom of Persia, King Ahasuerus, a powerful and impulsive ruler, held a great banquet. During the feast, he demanded that his queen, Vashti, display her beauty before the guests. Queen Vashti refused, and the king, in his anger, deposed her. Esther, chapter 1, 10-19. To find a new queen, the king ordered that all the beautiful young women in the kingdom be brought to his palace. Among them was a Jewish woman named Esther, who was under the care of her cousin Mordecai. Mordecai had raised Esther as his own daughter after her parents died. Esther 2, 5-7. Mordecai instructed Esther to keep her Jewish identity a secret. Esther obeyed, and she found favor in the eyes of Haggai, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the women. Esther was eventually chosen to be the new queen. Esther 2:8-18. Meanwhile, a high-ranking official named Haman rose to power in the kingdom. He was arrogant and demanded that everyone bow down to him. Mordecai, a devout Jew, refused to bow because his faith only allowed him to bow to God. This infuriated Haman. Esther 3:1-6. Haman, consumed by rage, plotted to destroy not only Mordecai but all the Jewish people in the kingdom. He convinced King Ahasuerus to issue a decree ordering the extermination of all Jews on a specific day. The decree was written into law and sealed with the king's signet ring, making it irrevocable. Esther 3:7-15. When Mordecai learned of the decree, he mourned deeply and urged Esther to intervene with the king. Esther was afraid because approaching the king without being summoned was punishable by death. Esther 4:1-11. Mordecai sent a message to Esther, reminding her that she was also a Jew and that her position as queen might be for just this purpose. He said, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther 4:14. Esther, realizing the gravity of the situation, decided to act. She told Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa and fast for her for 3 days, and she and her attendants would do the same. Then she would go to the king, even though it was against the law. "If I perish, I perish," she said. Esther 4:15-16. After 3 days of fasting and prayer, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace, facing the king's throne. The king saw her and extended his golden scepter to her, signifying his acceptance. Esther 5:1-2. Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. At the banquet, the king asked Esther what she wanted. She asked them to come to another banquet the next day. Esther 5:3-8. Haman was thrilled to be invited to a private banquet with the queen and the king. However, his joy was diminished by Mordecai's continued refusal to bow. He consulted with his wife and friends, who advised him to build a gallows to hang Mordecai. Esther 5:9-14. That night the king couldn't sleep. He ordered the book of records to be brought to him, and he read about how Mordecai had uncovered a plot to assassinate him. He learned that Mordecai had never been rewarded for his loyalty. Esther 6:1-3. The next morning, the king asked Haman what should be done for the man the king delighted to honor. Haman, thinking the king was referring to him, suggested a grand procession with royal robes and a royal horse. The king then ordered Haman to do all these things for Mordecai. Esther 6:4-11. At the second banquet, the king again asked Esther what she wanted. Esther revealed her Jewish identity and exposed Haman's plot to annihilate her people. Esther 7:1-6. The king was furious. He ordered Haman to be hanged on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Esther 7:7-10. The king then issued a new decree allowing the Jews to defend themselves against any who attacked them. The Jews fought back against their enemies and were victorious. Mordecai was promoted to Haman's position, and Esther continued to be a beloved queen. Esther 8:1-9-19. The Jewish people established the festival of Purim to commemorate their deliverance from Haman's plot. Esther 9:20-32. Moral lesson. This story teaches us about courage, faith, and God's providential care. Esther's bravery in risking her life to save her people is a powerful example of selfless love. Her story reminds us that God can use ordinary people in extraordinary ways to accomplish his purposes. It also emphasizes the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult or dangerous. Esther's willingness to trust in God and act decisively saved her people from destruction. The story of Esther also highlights God's faithfulness and his ability to turn even the most difficult circumstances into opportunities for good. The shepherd who wouldn't quit. Imagine losing something incredibly precious, something you loved, something vital to your livelihood. What would you do? Would you give up after a quick search? Or would you keep looking no matter how long it took? In the rolling hills of ancient Israel, a shepherd faced this very dilemma. This is the story of a shepherd and his lost sheep. The sun beat down on the Judean hills, baking the earth a reddish brown. David, a young shepherd with eyes as bright as the morning star, scanned his flock. 99 sheep grazed peacefully, their woolly bodies dotting the landscape like fluffy clouds. He knew each one by name, their individual quirks and habits etched in his memory. These weren't just sheep, they were his responsibility, entrusted to him by his father, Jesse. As the day wore on, David moved his flock towards a small stream, a vital source of water in the arid land. He counted them as they drank, a habit ingrained from years of shepherding. 96, 97, 98. Panic seized him. One was missing. Fear pricked at David's heart. One sheep lost could mean a weakened flock, vulnerable to predators. But more than that, he felt a deep connection to each of his animals. The thought of one wandering alone, scared and helpless, was unbearable. "I must find her," he murmured, his voice filled with determination. Leaving the 99 in a sheltered valley under the watchful eye of his older brother, David set off in search of the lost sheep. He retraced their steps, his keen eyes scanning the rocky terrain for any sign. He called out her name, "Leah, Leah," his voice echoing through the hills. Hours passed. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. Doubt gnawed at David. Had she wandered too far? Had a wild animal already found her? The terrain grew more treacherous, thorny bushes snagging at his clothes, sharp rocks cutting into his sandals. Many would have given up, reasoning that one sheep wasn't worth the risk. But David pressed on, fueled by his unwavering commitment. Finally, as darkness threatened to engulf the land, he heard it, a faint, plaintive bleating. He followed the sound, pushing through dense undergrowth until he found her. Leah was trapped in a thicket, her wool tangled in the branches, her eyes wide with fear. Relief washed over David. Gently, he untangled her from the thorns, soothing her with soft words. He lifted her into his arms, cradling her close to his chest. Exhausted but overjoyed, he began the long trek back to the flock. The journey back was slow, but David didn't mind. He held Leah securely, her small body trembling against him. He imagined the joy he would feel when he reunited her with the others. When he finally reached the valley, his brother was astonished to see him carrying the lost sheep. David didn't say a word. He simply presented Leah to the flock. The other sheep bleated in recognition, nudging her with their noses. That night, as David lay under the stars, he thought about the day's events. He realized that searching for the lost sheep wasn't just about protecting his flock. It was about love, responsibility, and unwavering dedication. He had refused to give up even when it was difficult because he valued each and every one of his sheep. Centuries later, Jesus used this very story to illustrate God's boundless love for humanity. Luke 15:4-7. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he loses one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Like David, the Good Shepherd, God never gives up on us. He seeks us out when we are lost, trapped in our own fears and failings. He rejoices when we return to Him, welcoming us with open arms. The moral of the story is clear. God's love is relentless, His grace is boundless, and He will always pursue the lost sheep until they are safely home. Don't ever think you are too far gone. God's love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it's always searching for you. The unlikely hero. Could a shepherd boy really defeat a giant? Imagine the roar of a giant echoing across a valley, a giant so terrifying that grown soldiers trembled in fear. For 40 days, Goliath, a Philistine warrior, taunted the Israelite army, daring them to send someone to fight him. Fear gripped the hearts of every soldier, except for one unlikely individual, a young shepherd boy named David. This is the story of how faith, courage, and God's power turned a simple shepherd into a national hero, based on 1 Samuel 17. The Israelite army was camped on a hillside, facing the Philistines on another. The valley of Elah separated the two forces, a silent stage for an impending battle. But the silence was shattered each day by Goliath's booming voice. He was a mountain of a man clad in bronze armor from head to toe. His spear was as thick as a weaver's beam, and his shield-bearer walked before him. "Why do you come out to line up for battle?" Goliath would bellow. "Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." 1 Samuel 17:8-9. King Saul and his entire army were paralyzed with fear. They knew Goliath was a formidable warrior, and no one dared to face him. Days turned into weeks, and the taunting continued, each day chipping away at the morale of the Israelites. Meanwhile, young David was tending his father's sheep in Bethlehem. One day, his father Jesse called him. "Take this offering of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to their camp," Jesse instructed. "See how your brothers are doing, and bring back some word from them." 1 Samuel 17:17-18. David, obedient to his father, set off early the next morning. He left the sheep with a keeper and made his way to the Israelite camp. When he arrived, the army was just going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. David quickly left his things with the keeper of supplies and ran to the battle lines to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath came forward from the Philistine lines and shouted his usual challenge. David overheard the giant's words and saw the Israelite soldiers running away in fear. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? David asked the men around him. 1 Samuel 17:26. His boldness caught the attention of some soldiers, who reported him to King Saul. Saul summoned David, surprised to see such a young, inexperienced boy volunteering for such a dangerous task. "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him," Saul said to David. "You are only a boy, and he has been a warrior from his youth." 1 Samuel 17:33. But David was not deterred. He replied, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." 1 Samuel 17:34-37. Saul, impressed by David's faith and courage, finally relented. "Go," he said, "and the Lord be with you." 1 Samuel 17:37. Saul tried to outfit David with his own armor, a bronze helmet, a coat of mail, and a sword. But David, unaccustomed to such heavy equipment, found them cumbersome. "I cannot go in these," he told Saul, "because I am not used to them." So he took them off. 1 Samuel 17:39. Instead, David chose his shepherd's staff, selected 5 smooth stones from the stream, and put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag. With his sling in his hand, he approached Goliath. When Goliath saw David, he was filled with contempt. "Am I a dog," he roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" And he cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." 1 Samuel 17:43-44. David was not intimidated. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin," David replied, "but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." 1 Samuel 17:45-47. Goliath charged toward David, but David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it. The stone struck Goliath on the forehead and sank into it, and he fell face down on the ground. 1 Samuel 17:49. David ran and stood over him. He took Goliath's sword and drew it from its sheath. Then he struck him and cut off his head. 1 Samuel 17:51. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. The men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout, pursuing the Philistines all the way to Gath and Ekron. David, the unlikely hero, had defeated the giant Goliath, not with brute strength or military experience, but with unwavering faith in God. Moral lesson. This story teaches us that with God, even the smallest and seemingly weakest among us can overcome the greatest challenges. It's not about our own strength or abilities, but about trusting in God's power and having the courage to stand up for what is right, even when facing overwhelming odds. David's faith and obedience allowed God to work through him in a miraculous way. We too can find strength and victory through faith in God. The fearless queen. Imagine being a queen living in a beautiful palace with servants at your beck and call. Sounds perfect, right? But what if your king made a law that could wipe out your entire people? Would you risk everything, even your own life, to save them? This is the impossible choice Queen Esther faced, and her courage changed the course of history. The story unfolds in ancient Persia, a land of vast riches and absolute power during the reign of King Xerxes, also known as Ahasuerus. He ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. The Jewish people, exiled from their homeland, lived scattered throughout this kingdom, subject to the king's laws. King Xerxes, after a lavish banquet, became enraged when his queen, Vashti, refused to display her beauty to his guests. In his fury, he banished her and sought a new queen. A beautiful Jewish woman named Esther was among those brought before the king. She captured his heart and was crowned queen, but she kept her Jewish identity a secret, as advised by her cousin and guardian Mordecai. Meanwhile, a proud and wicked official named Haman rose to power in the kingdom. He demanded that everyone bow down to him, but Mordecai, a devout Jew, refused, bowing only to God. Enraged, Haman vowed to not only punish Mordecai, but to annihilate the entire Jewish population. Haman cunningly convinced King Xerxes that the Jews were a rebellious people who did not obey the king's laws. He offered a large sum of money to the royal treasury in exchange for a decree to destroy them all. The king, blinded by arrogance and greed, agreed, sealing the decree with his royal signet ring, making it irrevocable. The decree was sent out to every province, ordering the massacre of all Jews, young and old, women and children, on a specific date. When Mordecai learned of the devastating decree, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went through the city, crying out in bitter lamentation. He sent a message to Esther, urging her to go before the king and plead for her people. Esther faced an agonizing decision. According to Persian law, anyone who approached the king uninvited risked death unless the king extended his golden scepter. She had not been summoned by the king for 30 days, and she feared for her life. Mordecai sent a powerful message back to Esther. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther 4:13-14. These words pierced Esther's heart. She realized that God had placed her in a position of power for a specific purpose. She resolved to act, even if it meant risking her life. Esther sent word to Mordecai, requesting that all the Jews in Susa fast and pray for her for 3 days, and she and her maids would do the same. Then she declared, "If I perish, I perish." Esther 4:16. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace, facing the king's throne room. King Xerxes was seated on his throne, and when he saw Queen Esther standing there, He was pleased with her and extended the golden scepter to her. Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. The king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom it will be given you." Esther 5:3. Esther, instead of revealing her request immediately, invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. During the banquet, the king again asked Esther what she desired. Esther invited them to another banquet the next day, promising to reveal her request then. Haman left the first banquet filled with pride, but his joy turned to rage when he saw Mordecai still refusing to bow to him. He consulted with his wife and friends, who advised him to build a gallows and ask the king to hang Mordecai on it. That night King Xerxes could not sleep. He ordered the book of memorable deeds, the chronicles of his reign, to be read to him. It was discovered that Mordecai had once uncovered a plot to assassinate the king. The king had never rewarded Mordecai for this service. The next morning, the king asked Haman what should be done for the man the king delights to honor. Haman, thinking the king was referring to him, suggested extravagant honors, including being paraded through the city on the king's horse, wearing the king's royal robes. To Haman's horror, the king ordered him to bestow these honors upon Mordecai. At the second banquet, King Xerxes again pressed Esther to reveal her request. This time Esther bravely spoke. "If I have found favor in your eyes, your majesty, and if it pleases your majesty, grant me my life, this is my petition, and spare my people, this is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king." Esther 7:3-4. The king was furious. "Who is he? Where is he? The man who has dared to do such a thing?" he demanded. Esther pointed her finger at Haman. "This wicked Haman is the adversary and enemy." Esther 7:6. The king, enraged, left the banquet hall. Haman, realizing his life was in danger, pleaded with Esther for mercy. The king returned to find Haman seemingly attacking Esther. Misinterpreting the scene, the king ordered Haman to be hanged on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. The king then reversed the decree against the Jews, allowing them to defend themselves. The Jews throughout the kingdom fought against their enemies and prevailed. Mordecai was promoted to a high position in the kingdom, second only to the king. Mordecai established the Feast of Purim to commemorate the Jews' deliverance from destruction. It is a time of feasting, rejoicing, giving gifts to one another, and remembering God's faithfulness. The story of Esther teaches us several important lessons. Courage in the face of fear. Esther risked her life to stand up for what was right. God's providence. God works behind the scenes, even when we don't see it, to accomplish His purposes. He placed Esther in a position of power for a specific reason. Faith and trust in God. Esther and the Jewish people relied on prayer and fasting to seek God's help. Standing up for justice, Mordecai refused to compromise his faith and stood up against injustice. God's protection. God protects His people from harm. Esther's story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, courage, faith, and obedience to God can bring about miraculous deliverance. It shows us that God can use ordinary people like Esther to accomplish extraordinary things for his glory. Solomon's Gambit: How a King's Impossible Choice revealed God's wisdom. What if everything you believed about justice was about to be challenged? Imagine a king known for his wisdom, faced with a plea that could unravel his entire kingdom. This is the story of Solomon, two mothers, and a baby, a story that reveals the true meaning of a mother's love and God's extraordinary wisdom. King Solomon, the son of David, ruled Israel with unmatched wisdom. The Bible says God gave him a wise and discerning heart.